everybody, welcome to Global Cajon. In this chapter we are going to talk about technique. Have fun! The way I have studied technique is 99% over the music that I like. Using the metronome is not the only possible way to work on your time. I prefer studying over good music. Practicing over music indirectly gets you used to be aware of structures, makes you intuitively start thinking in groups of 4, 8, 16 and 32. Helps you learn to be guided by the harmonic rhythm, exposes you to eventually listen to interesting lyrics, and will help you increase your repertoire, plus many other side benefits the metronome will not give you. This is the most used and intuitive approach to a percussion instrument. It consists of playing using one hand at a time. To get used to this technique, I recommend putting your favorite music on and start subdividing, following the flow of the music, one hand at a time. This technical approach is good to play all types of groups in all kinds of time signatures, and is the foundation over which we go to more advanced techniques. For many cases, 1-1 technique is enough, and mastering it is something any musician, not only percussionist, should do. Most of the pop music around these days is in 4/4, so let's start with that as an example. Let's subdivide in 16th notes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. At this early stage, I suggest starting the motion with your stronger hand. This means if you are right-handed, play the first note of the groove with your right hand. If you are lefty, then your strong hand will be the left.
Without love and without money, without wings and without you, I'm escaping from the sunset towards the morning, yeah. Without time and without sea.
Once you are fluent with that, let's accent the first note of the bar with the bass note.
And without money, without wings and without you, I'm escaping from the sunset towards the morning, yeah. Without time and without seasons, without tears,
The next thing to do is find a good musical place to play a high note. Continuing with the same pop example, the obvious place to make a high note accent would be 1, 2, 4, 2, 4, also called the backbeats of a pop pattern. Remember, this is not a style lesson, this is just the beginning technique exercise.
Without wings and without you, I'm escaping from the sunset towards the morning. Yeah, without time and without seasons, without tears but without stars, feeling like a stranger, a well-known stranger.
It's very important that once we start doing patterns and we are on our first attempts to groove, that we really focus on not breaking the motion of one hand after the other. It's crucial. And there's a tricky moment, which is the first time you want to do a bass note with your weak hand. Most of my students that are in that point have a hard time following the motion after that bass note with the weak hand. Let's make an example and see it. Look. Okay. This pattern. The tricky point is here. Okay. Right after that bass note with our weak hand, tum, pa, kun, pa, or tum, pa, kun, ka. That accent in our weak hand makes it very complex to continue with the one-on-one motion. Work on that, because it's like finding fire for the human race. I mean, once you are able to do that, you really start another era in your percussion abilities. Okay, so work on that. Now let's play this very basic pop pattern. Now let's make a pattern where the weak hand does something more than ghost notes. Now let's make all this starting with your weak hand instead of starting with your strong hand. You won't start with your weak hand on a recording or a gig, but this will help training for future needs. Another very musical but good hand exercise is to play the above grooves but subdividing in 32nd notes instead of 16 notes. That will really put your hands in shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
Okay, let's be aware of the process that we are following. First, we have to get used to subdividing accurately. No accents, no bass notes, nothing. Just one-on-one technique and being accurate, subdividing to the music. Then, once our brain and then our hands are able to do that, we start the transition to something more musical. The first thing to do that is putting a bass on one, which is very musical. So we were tiki 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 tiki. We start tumbi tiki 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 pumbi tiki tiki without breaking the 1-1 motion. Once we are fine there, we start putting some accents on high notes. For example, 2 and 4. Tumi tiki chaki tiki 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 chaki tiki tum tiki chaki tiki 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 cha. Once we are good there, then let's start a very important point, which is starting to make an accent with our weak hand. For example, tumi tiki chaki boom tiki chaki tiki boom tiki chaki boom, without breaking the 1-on-1 motion. And finally, we have to start being aware of the quality of the sound that we are making. It's not the same that boom, okay? And then training that with our weak hand, starting with our weak hand instead of our strong hand, okay? The next exercise I suggest to keep working on your 1-on-1 technique is playing 12/8, which is dividing each pulse in 3 notes, like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Let's play the downbeats on bass notes and the rest on high notes.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
Now let's make a high note accent on the previous note to the bass. Notice that this means making that high note with the other hand than the bass. That's what 1-on-1 technique is all about.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
If you're fine and comfortable with 1-on-1 technique, you are ready to move on to next chapter.
Two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
hope you enjoyed this chapter. You can find many other chapters of the Global Cajon method in my YouTube channel. Also in my website or Facebook you can find the index to see all the chapters. See you around. Adios.